There is a specific kind of financial position that looks secure from the outside and is structurally fragile from the inside. Not fragile in the dramatic
The real
sense,
issue
not
isn't
one
the
missed
daily
paycheck from
volatility you
homelessness,
see on the news.
not facing immediate
It's something
collapse.
far more subtle.
Fragile in the sense that a significant but
The space
entirely
between these
plausible
indicators,
disruption,
job
a
loss,
job
market
loss, a
volatility,
market
and health
correction,
crises,
a prolonged
that
illness,
space is the
would force
structural
decisions
fragility
most
we
people
must
in that
address.
position never imagined having to make. The position looks like this from the outside. Professional career, good income, nice neighborhood, appropriate car, children in the right schools, membership in the right social environments. All of the visible markers of upper-class status, or at minimum, upper-middle-class arrival. The person occupying this position is not faking it. They earned it. The income is real. The credentials are legitimate. The lifestyle is not a performance. It is the natural result of a career trajectory that most people would describe as successful. But the financial position underneath that lifestyle is often considerably more precarious than the visible markers would suggest. And the precariousness is not accidental. It is structural. It is the predictable consequence of a set of decisions that were individually reasonable and collectively created a situation where financial resilience, the capacity to absorb disruption without forced lifestyle change, is minimal or absent. This is not a moral argument about people living beyond their means. This is an observation about a specific economic position: high income, high fixed costs, low buffer. And the observation is this: that position, which looks like upper-class security, is often one of the most financially fragile positions in the entire income distribution. Here's why. Part 1. The fragility ratio, fixed costs divided by liquid buffer. Financial fragility is not primarily a function of income level. It is a function of the relationship between fixed monthly costs and available liquid reserves. Consider two positions. Person A earns $80,000 per year. Their fixed monthly costs, rent, car payment, insurance, food, utilities, minimum loan payments, total $3,500. They have $21,000 in liquid savings. If their income stops, they can sustain their current lifestyle for 6 months before anything needs to change. Person B earns $250,000 per year. Their fixed monthly costs, mortgage on the house in the right neighborhood, private school tuition, car payments on 2 appropriate vehicles, insurance, property taxes, HOA fees, the minimum spending required to maintain their social position, total $15,000. They have $30,000 in liquid savings. If their income stops, they can sustain their current lifestyle for 2 months. Person A, earning $80,000, has a 6-month runway. Person B, earning $250,000, has a 2-month runway. Person B is earning more than 3 times what Person A earns. Person B is significantly more fragile. This is the fragility ratio. Monthly fixed burn rate divided by liquid buffer equals months of runway. The smaller the number, the more fragile the position, regardless of income level. The upper-class lifestyle, or the lifestyle that signals upper-class status, requires a specific level of monthly expenditure to maintain. The mortgage or rent in the neighborhood that communicates arrival. The tuition at the school that provides the right peer group for the children. The vehicles that don't undercut professional credibility. The wardrobe, the vacations, the memberships. Each of these is individually defensible. Together, they create a fixed monthly burn rate that is structurally high. And here is the problem. The higher the fixed burn rate, the larger the buffer required to maintain financial resilience. A person with $5,000 in monthly fixed costs needs $30,000 in liquid savings to maintain a 6-month runway. A person with $15,000 in monthly fixed costs needs $90,000 in liquid savings to maintain the same runway. Most people in the upper middle class income range, $150,000 to $400,000 per year, do not have $90,000 in liquid savings. Not because they're irresponsible, because they directed those resources toward the visible components of the lifestyle their income level is expected to support. The result? They look secure. They are fragile. Part 2. The upper middle class trap. Enough income to signal status, not enough margin to build resilience. There is a specific income band where this dynamic is most pronounced. Not low income, where fragility is visible and expected. not high income, where margin exists even after status signaling. The band where income is high enough to support an upper-class lifestyle, but not high enough to support that lifestyle and build significant liquid reserves simultaneously. The Schwab Modern Wealth Survey documented this precisely. In their 2023 findings, 36% of people earning six figures reported living paycheck to paycheck, not because their income was insufficient to cover their expenses, because their expenses expanded to consume their income, leaving minimal margin for buffer building or disruption absorption. This is the upper middle class trap. Income high enough to afford the signals, not high enough to afford the signals and the safety net. The choice, when it presents itself, is almost always made in favor of the signals, because the signals are visible, socially enforced, and immediately relevant to professional and social standing. The safety net is invisible, socially irrelevant, and only becomes relevant when a disruption occurs. By the time the disruption occurs, the runway is already short. And shortening the runway further by reducing fixed costs requires dismantling the visible components of the lifestyle that the income was supposed to support. The house, the school, the neighborhood, the memberships. Each of these can be technically changed. None of them can be changed without social cost, without professional perception shift, without the internal sense that the trajectory reversed. The person in this position is not underwater. They are not facing bankruptcy. They are simply in a situation where any significant disruption forces choices they never expected to confront. That's fragility. And it exists at income levels most people would describe as financially secure. Part 3. The Social Ratchet. Why upper-class lifestyle cannot downgrade without cost. Here is the mechanism that converts a temporary budget allocation into a permanent structural vulnerability. Once a visible lifestyle standard is established, through housing choice, school selection, social environment, professional presentation, a social ratchet engages. The standard can move upward relatively easily. It can move downward only with significant friction. The friction is not primarily financial. It is social and psychological. The family that moves from the right neighborhood to a more affordable one is not just changing addresses. They are signaling something to their peer group, to their professional network, to themselves. The signal is visible. The interpretation is rarely generous. The child who transfers from the private school to the public school is not just changing classrooms. They are experiencing a reference point shift that they did not choose and cannot fully understand. The parent making that decision is not just reallocating budget. They are reversing a trajectory they worked years to establish. This is why upper-class lifestyle, once established, resists downgrade even when financial logic would recommend it. The costs of maintaining it are high. The costs of reversing it, social, psychological, professional, feel higher. And this creates the fragility. Because if the lifestyle cannot downgrade without unacceptable cost, then any income disruption that requires lifestyle adjustment becomes a crisis rather than an inconvenience. The person with the 6-month runway and the willingness to adjust has options. The person with the 2-month runway and the social ratchet locked in place does not. The ratchet is not malicious. It is the natural consequence of human social calibration. Once people around you calibrate to a certain standard, they notice deviations. Once you calibrate to that standard internally, deviations feel like failure. The mechanism is invisible until it engages. Once engaged, it is difficult to disengage without cost. This is why the upper-class lifestyle, or the lifestyle that looks upper-class, often produces fragility rather than security, not because the income is insufficient, because the lifestyle consumes the margin that would otherwise create resilience. Part 4. Income volatility at professional levels is higher than it appears. There is a misconception that professional-level income is stable, that once someone reaches a certain income tier, $150,000, $200,000, $300,000, the income stays there or continues climbing. The data does not support this. Professional income is significantly more volatile than most people in professional positions realize, while their income is stable. Layoffs are not evenly distributed across income levels. During economic contractions, companies disproportionately reduce headcount in highly compensated roles, because the budget impact per person is larger and the replacement pipeline is deeper. A $250,000 roll eliminated saves more than three $75,000 rolls. The decision is rational from a corporate perspective. The person in the $250,000 roll often does not see it coming. Bonus structures, which represent a significant portion of total compensation at higher income levels, compress or disappear entirely during downturns. A person earning $200,000 base plus $100,000 bonus is not earning $300,000 reliably. They are earning $200,000 with significant upside that evaporates when conditions tighten. Consulting, freelancing, and commission-based professional income, common at higher income tiers, fluctuates significantly more than salaried W-2 income. The person earning $400,000 in a good year might earn $150,000 in a bad year. If their fixed costs are calibrated to $400,000, the bad year is a crisis. None of this is visible when income is stable. The person earning $250,000 looks secure. The position feels secure. The income has been reliable for years. And then the income changes. Not because of personal failure, but because of structural forces outside individual control. And the fragility that was invisible becomes immediately, unavoidably real. The upper-class lifestyle is built on an assumption of income stability. Income at that level is less stable than the lifestyle requires. The gap between the assumption and the reality is where fragility lives. Two profiles, 25 years later. Here is what the mathematics produce. Person A and Person B both earn $200,000 per year at age 35. Same income, same starting point, different allocation. Person A lives in a neighborhood appropriate to their income. Private school for the children, 2 newer cars, memberships at the right clubs, annual vacations that match their peer group. Fixed monthly costs, $14,000. Liquid savings at age 35, $40,000. Fragility ratio, 2.8 months. Person B lives in a neighborhood slightly below their income level. Public school with selective magnet programs for the children. 2 reliable used cars. Minimal club memberships. Vacations that prioritize experience over social signaling. Fixed monthly costs, $7,000. Liquid savings at age 35, $120,000. Fragility ratio, 17 months. At age 40, both experience a job loss that lasts 8 months. Person A burns through the $40,000 in liquid savings in the first 3 months. The next 5 months are financed by credit cards, 401k loans, and family assistance. By the time new employment is secured, the financial position has degraded significantly. The credit card debt is real. The 401k loan must be repaid. The relationship with family is strained. The trajectory feels reversed. Person B absorbs the 8-month disruption entirely from liquid savings. The buffer drops from $120,000 to $64,000. No debt incurred, no loans required, no trajectory reversal. By the time new employment is secured, the position is intact. The buffer will rebuild over the next 2 years. The disruption was expensive, but contained. Same income, same disruption, completely different structural outcome. The difference was not discipline during the disruption. The difference was the fragility ratio built over the preceding 5 years. Person A optimized for visible security. Person B optimized for structural resilience. Visible security looks better in stable conditions. Structural resilience performs better when conditions change. The people who look upper class are often the most financially fragile because the visible markers of upper class status consume the resources that would otherwise produce resilience. Not in every case. Some people have enough income to afford both the signals and the buffer. But for the majority of people in the upper middle income range, the choice presents itself. Allocate toward looking secure or allocate toward being secure. Most people choose looking secure, not because they're irrational, because the social and professional costs of not signaling appropriately feel immediate and real, while the costs of fragility remain hypothetical until a disruption occurs. By the time the disruption occurs, the runway is short, the ratchet is engaged, the options are limited, and the position that looked secure reveals itself to be something else entirely. This is not a moral failing. It is a structural consequence of reasonable decisions made under social pressure in an economic environment that rewards visible signals and penalizes invisible resilience. The upper-class lifestyle is not inherently fragile. High fixed costs without corresponding buffer is inherently fragile. The two often coincide. That coincidence is not accidental. It is the predictable result of optimizing for the wrong variable.